Chapter 5. Modulation and Bandwidth. Modulation is the process of encoding information, such as voice or data, onto a carrier wave, allowing it to travel through the atmosphere. Different modulation types have unique characteristics and applications, like AM, FM, and digital methods. Bandwidth, the range of frequencies a signal occupies, is closely tied to modulation, as each type requires different amounts of bandwidth to transmit clearly and efficiently. Together, modulation and bandwidth form the backbone of signal quality, efficiency, and reach, making them critical concepts for every radio operator. This chapter explores how these elements work and interact. Modulation. Modulation is the process of varying a carrier signal to transmit information such as voice, data, or video. At its core, modulation involves altering one or more properties of a carrier wave, typically its amplitude, frequency, or phase, to encode the information you wish to send. The primary purpose of modulation is to make the signal compatible with the transmission medium, allowing it to travel over long distances and through various environments. Without modulation, the raw signal would be too weak or unstable to reach its destination reliably. You already learned a lot about basic modulation to obtain your technician's license. For the general test, we will assume you have a baseline foundation of modulation and dive right into the deep end of the modulation pool. Amplitude modulation. Amplitude modulation, or AM, is one of the earliest and most straightforward methods of modulating a radio frequency, RF, signal. In AM, the carrier wave's amplitude or strength is varied in proportion to the amplitude of the input signal, such as voice or music. The carrier's frequency remains constant, but its instantaneous power level fluctuates based on the information being transmitted. AM has been widely used in broadcasting, particularly for AM radio stations. I'm shocked! And in some types of voice communication systems. While it is more susceptible to noise and interference than other modulation types, it is still important in radio communication. Generating an AM signal begins with the modular circuit, which combines the audio signal with the carrier wave. This modulated signal then passes through an amplifier to boost its strength before being sent to the antenna and transmitted. On the receiving end, the AM receiver uses a demodulator circuit to extract the audio signal from the modulated carrier. This involves rectifying the signal to remove the negative half of the waveform, followed by filtering to remove the high-frequency carrier, leaving only the original audio. G8A05. What type of modulation varies the instantaneous power level of the RF signal? A. Power modulation. B. Phase modulation. C. Frequency modulation. D. Amplitude modulation. D. Amplitude modulation. Remember amplitude modulation as controlling the power level or strength of a signal. As the signal's power fluctuates based on the input, the information is embedded in the varying amplitude of the carrier wave. This contrasts with frequency modulation, where the frequency of the carrier wave is varied instead of its amplitude. Modulation envelopes. In AM, a modulation envelope is a key concept to understanding how information is transmitted. The envelope represents the overall shape of the modulated signal, showing how the amplitude of the carrier wave changes in response to the input signal. By visualizing the envelope, you can see the peaks and troughs that correspond to the variations in the signal's amplitude, which carry the information being transmitted. This helps operators monitor signal quality and ensure proper modulation levels. The modulation envelope of an AM signal is the waveform created by connecting the peak values of the modulated signal. Basically, the signal's outline or shape shows how the carrier wave's amplitude varies over time as it carries the information. The carrier itself oscillates rapidly at its own frequency. Still, the envelope gives a clear picture of how the signal strength changes based on the input being transmitted.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.